Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So today we are back again with a full-on Guardian review, and I'm gonna try to get back to doing more of these as new champions come out. I have been slacking for like the last half a year on these new champion reviews. But anyways, we're gonna start up with a damage test, and this is a maxed out 3-star SIG 90 Guardian in 5.3, the tech quest 5.32, and we're just up against the Yellow Jacket because I found Yellow Jacket to be kind of like a fair opponent when it comes to how well Guardian can utilize his abilities and extra power gain from the level 1s compared to the champion we're going to be putting him up against. And for most part, I'm just going to stick to the level 1, level 2 rotation, which I think is going to be how Guardian will be played for most part in majority of the fights when he is used in like regular questing variants, Act 6, so on and so forth. I don't think there are going to be too many people who want to build him up to level 3, then go for level 2. Ideally, probably your kind of like game plan is a level 1, then go into level 2, and then deal still a significant burst amount of damage. You can see that these level 2s did quite decently. So at 62 hits, we are about halfway through the fight. So the fight should be around 120 hits by this estimation, more or less. And here we can see that 6 charges, he's going to go from 53% to 27%, something like that. So it is a significant burst of damage. Keep in mind, this is a 3-star in Act 5.3, so these guys are quite chunky. They have like 77k health, I believe. And yeah, he's definitely putting in work. He will not be kind of like the biggest damage dealing champion in the game for sure. We're gonna see that in just a moment, where we are going to be putting him up against a bit more familiar face. But here we can see that still the damage he does is all right. It's not going to be the top level damage. It's not going to be Ghost or Omega Red or Corvus in his appropriate short fights or anything like that. He will take a bit longer than many of the highest damage dealing champions, like, I don't know, Nick Fury, for example. And I thought that good comparison to put him up against would be Stark Enhanced Spider-Man. So both of them are tech champions, and both of them are actually a bit more similar than people think, because they have access to Power Drain, but they're not really Power Drain champions. Both of them have access to Taunt. Both of them have their damage on level 2 and access to Shock Wire at level 2. And yeah, obviously the polar differences between Guardian and Spider-Man Stark Enhanced would be that Guardian is really, really chunky and has a lot of resistances. Spider-Man Stark does not, however. But when it comes to damage, Spider-Man Stark will leave Guardian in the dust. So you can see kind of like very solid place where Guardian will land in his everyday questing damage. It's not going to be bad. It's definitely going to be good enough to keep him viable and usable in harder content, but he will not be your fastest quester or fastest killer, and just, yeah, he's not going to be the champion that you pick for casual questing and uncollected. He will not hit that card because he does need a ramp up much longer than many other champions. And yeah, here we can see that 50 hits in, Yellow Jacket is at like 40 something percent. I'm about to go for my level 2. There are some crits on that, 26%. And yeah, Spider-Man Stark Enhanced is definitely gonna have Red Guardian quite freely, solidly, and openly. In neither of these fights, any of the synergies were being used, no boosts were being used, and they are the same mastery setup against the same opponent with the same class advantage. And both of these fights kind of like let the champion shine a bit, because Guardian can gain power gain from perfect blocking those beams, and Stark Enhanced Spidey can gain Poise Charge. So we can see 83 hits, Guardian was like 120 hits, so he's definitely not going to be hitting as hard as the top options. Now, when it comes to Guardian's utility, obviously one of the first and foremost matchups everybody's talking about, how that armor buff is going to make him great for countering Havocs, but it is not as straightforward as most people think, and you will have to know what you're doing if you are using Guardian against Havoc. Now, first things first, obviously it's very useful that you can parry projectile attacks. That will help you in the fight, definitely. It's going to make it more smooth and simple. But watch what is about to happen now. So I'm about to go for my level 2, and yeah, this is gonna be kind of like happy days, fun days. So I'm about to go for my level 2, and as soon as I drop my level 2, obviously it consumes my armor buff, and then since I'm dealing a lot of shock, a lot of energy damage, I just basically immediately detonated twice, and yeah, the fight's over. So Guardian is a good Havoc counter, however, because he has a mechanic on his heavy attack where you can consume 2 of your charges and gain additional armor buff for 15 seconds. But that is like the crucial, very, very important bit, because you never want to leave yourself without an armor buff against Havoc when you're using Guardian, because you deal energy damage and he's gaining all of them plasma charges very, very quickly. So a single moment without armor buff is basically going to get you wrecked. So the strategy, the go-to plan that you should have is when you are about to be ready to drop a level 2, you need to throw your heavy attack first. As you can see here, I consumed 2 of my charges, and with that I gain additional armor buff, which was consumed instead of my permanent one, and I can safely carry on the fight. And another thing to kind of like note, obviously, is that it does hinder your damage output a bit, because consuming 2 charges is quite a significant thing. However, on the upside, you have access to willpower heal, because Guardian obviously is not a robot. Robots typically do not have willpower heal. So some of our most popular counters would be like Guillotine 2099, that would be Warlock, for example, are robot champions, and you are unable to heal from these plasma charges. But a Guardian is a non-robot permanent armor buff champion, which is actually super kind of like useful, because it's going to help you to keep your health topped up. Now I'm going to speed up the rest of the fight here, and then we are going to move to the next showcases. Now it's very important for you to understand I'm not trying to kind of like hype Guardian up or showcase him from the best light. I'm actually trying to be extremely kind of critical and analyze where he can actually be used, and that is kind of like the point of this video, to be guide/review what I expect to see from Guardian when we actually can use him in serious content. But yeah, so now next fight obviously is going to be showcasing his huge energy resistance, and a good example would be Magic. And yeah, so my Guardian is Sig 90. Ideally, obviously at Sig 99 he is going to get even more energy resistance. So yeah, that here I do make a small mistake, I do get hit in the face, but we can see that whenever Magic triggers Limbo, it hardly ticks. It ticks for 69 damage. 69 damage against a rank 4 5-star Magic is definitely not a lot of damage, and that leads me to believe that you will be able to use Guardian relatively freely in kind of like majority of the scenarios where you do see Magic, because obviously the PI of this Magic is like 3 times the PI of the Guardian that I'm using. I even ate a couple of hits in the face, which obviously, due to the fact that he is quite tanky, I still survived. And yeah, he is going to be quite a decent option whenever it's going to come to dealing with these fun and interactive damages from Mephisto, from Magic, and all of the other good stuff. You could even kind of, to a degree, look at the fact that he could somewhat be an alternative to a Gladiator Hulk when it comes to dealing with this passive energy damage, but it has to be energy damage, which is very important. But yeah, so here you can see that a big level 2 wipes away that Magic. And for comparison, to see how much damage a normal champion would take, I'm bringing in a Star-Lord here. So before we had 69, I believe, the damage tick whenever she did trigger Limbo. And here we're going to see that a number for an everyday regular champion is going to be quite significantly higher. It's 216. So it's 3 times as much, so he takes 3 times less damage from Magic, and that would even be a bit more heightened if I had him max Sig. Unfortunately I don't. Unfortunately he's Sig 90, but yeah, taking 3 times less Limbo damage obviously is quite awesome. Now this fight I have sped up because it's gonna take a bit, but I also randomly discovered that he is not getting bleeds from Morningstar, which is obviously super helpful as ever. So he's always going to be able to counter Morningstar extremely well, and that is just like another added benefit. Quite honestly, I didn't realize that this is going to interact like that. My goal in taking him in this fight for test was to see how his bleed resistance is going to function and how much kind of like less damage is he going to take, or maybe he's going to be able to heal up with willpower and his bleed resistance. At Sig 90 it's 70% bleed resistance, at max Sig I believe it's 80% bleed resistance, but hey, yeah, he turns out to be a good Morningstar counter as well. Now the next fight is going to be a bit more interesting, and it's going to be Electro, obviously, because Electro does dish out this very fun and interactive damage as you strike him. But here we're going to be able to see that yeah, we're not taking all that much damage, and that's again thanks to his signature ability, to his tankiness, to his energy resistance, and we can see that we are barely taking any damage back from Electro whatsoever. Also the fact that our damage is not tied, well, our damage, we are never going to crit, means we will never take more than these little kind of like ticks of damage back from Electro. Now on the downside, which obviously I have to mention, Guardian's damage is tied to being shock damage. It's not just random energy damage, specifically shock damage. And obviously Electro doesn't take any damage from shock. Obviously there are going to be champions like Doom who will effectively never take any extra damage when Guardian would crit. So Guardian's damage output is going to be quite significantly hindered in every single matchup where opponents have shock immunity or they do not take damage from shocks in general. So that is very, very important to keep in mind. That is kind of like his bigger weakness, I would say. The shock immune champions will significantly hinder his damage output, and that is something to look out for. Those are his less favorable matchups for sure. But still, slowly but surely, we can see that we are going to get this Electro down. Obviously, yeah, it's taking us longer than it normally would because we cannot deal any extra shock damage from Special 2 or from our regular hits when they would happen to crit. So yeah, an important thing to keep in mind, that is he is significantly hindered against shock immune champions. And this fight is about to be over, and for comparison's sake, again, I'm gonna bring in Starlord in just a second, just to kind of like showcase what's the difference there, how much damage you would have taken in like a normal fight. Keep in mind this fight has lasted like 138 hits and we were still above 50% health. So in 150 hits plus, we've still remained above 50% health up against the 6-star rank 3 Electro. Now it's time to bring in Starlord, and we're going to check out how many hits and how long Starlord will be able to last and what's going to happen. So obviously, as you can see immediately, that damage we're taking back is significantly higher, even if the damage we are dishing out is on par, which it was with Guardian initially. Obviously, as Starlord ramps up and he hits harder and he crits, he takes more and more damage. And here we can see that his health is going down extremely quickly, far quicker than Electro's health is going down. And yeah, it's quite obvious at this point that we're not going to be able to finish out the fight because of the Electro's shock damage. So even though Guardian is hindered in his damage output in this matchup, he's still quite a solid counter to Electros and champions of similar nature. I'd assume Korg as well. I'm not too sure about how he would interact with Korg. I should have probably tested him. And now next matchup is going to be against Iceman. So Starlord and Guardian both will have class advantages. This is a 6-star rank 3 Iceman. These are just like a duels that I'm finding out. They are super helpful to make this video. But you can see that I got to 16% health, and that is with willpower heal. In the time it took for the cold snap to expire, my Starlord was all but dead, 16% health. And obviously, yes, you are able to finish out the fight if you play well, but who wants to take that much damage in quest and then later on be either forced to play out perfectly or inevitably heal up for the next matchup, right? So taking that much damage against Iceman, and that is exactly the amount of damage any average champion would take, is no good. It's a no-go. And we're going to be bringing in Guardian once again just to see how he compares. So it's kind of like a fair comparison here, because I think Starlord is a good baseline champion to go up against because his stats are kind of like average on maybe a bit sturdier side, and he's like a very basic solid champion with average health pool, average base attack, so on and so forth. Here we can see that instead of being at 16%, we are left at 79%. And keep in mind that the resistance would be increased even further at max signature level, and you would hardly take any damage at all combined with the willpower heal. And this is much more comfortable setting, and this will include all of the energy damage. So this could potentially make Guardian viable as an option for some biohazard or freezer burn lanes. He's not going to be the best option for them, but he will be able to get through some fights there. And this will make him, I don't know, viable for some incinerate nodes when you start the fight incinerated or cold snapped. Obviously Iceman, so on and so forth. As I mentioned before, Mephisto is very fun and interactive energy damage, magics. So this simple fact, the fact that he's very sturdy, he has a relatively decent amount of utility, somewhat above average damage, will make him a meta champion. In my opinion, he's going to be a champion that functions similarly as Warlock. Now, I'm not going to say that he's going to be better than Warlock, because I don't think he will, but I do think he will land somewhere in the bottom end of top 5 tech champions in the game overall. And as probably third best champion released this year would be kind of like my estimation on personal, obviously. And last thing that I wanted to showcase here was the synergy that he gives to every single champion except himself, was increased block proficiency. So there we saw that Call Obsidian was taking 513 damage per parry, and this is variant 3, I believe. Yes, variant 3 final quest. So let's see. So we used to take 519 damage, now it's 389. So this is a realistic extent where you can see how much that synergy is going to help your teammates. And obviously, first and foremost, you look at the teammates with the worst block proficiency. So albeit it's not going to sort out all of the problems, and it still leaves Call Obsidian to be somewhat squishy, let's call it like that, but it lets him take a lot more parries. It reduced the damage quite significantly. And as I was voicing this video, I actually saw a tweet from Otrix where he created a sandbox environment and took a Guardian 6-star to rank 3, ramped him up. It took him about 10 minutes, so it does take time obviously to get to 100 of those charges, but a single level 2 of a 6-star rank 3 Guardian dealt about 2.25 million damage. That's right, 2.25 million damage. But again, keep in mind it does take about 10-minute ramp up of you spamming special attacks and so forth. But I still found it to be interesting, just because it's always fun when champions can do something crazy or interesting or cheesy. But yeah, anyways. Again, to kind of sum it up, I expect Guardian to land in about 3rd to 5th, 6th spot in tech class. He's definitely going to be toward the higher end. He's not going to be better than Ghost, no chance. He will not knock down Warlock from his 2nd best tech champion status, but I think he's going to give Sentinel, Guillotine 2099, Mysterio, Dr. Octopus, starting against Spider-Man or whoever, run for their money and kind of battle somewhere in those positions depending how well he fits in the meta, in Alliance War, Alliance Quest, so on and so forth. But I am super excited for him. I'm hopeful. I do think he's going to be a great champion, and that will do for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I will try to get back to doing more of these type of reviews, because I personally think these were kind of like the better videos that I did on my channel. But yeah, whilst you enjoy the baby Yoda, hit that like button, hit that sub button, hit all the good buttons, and I'm gonna catch you guys soon. Do not forget to share the video with your friends as well. See ya.